Okay,
Matt,
it's about 6:35. Call this meeting to order. Thank you for all coming. For the agenda, Rebecca, do you need a verbal roll call or can you do it?
I'm sorry, I got
Okay. And Jerry, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any solutions, corrections to the agenda? On this side and on this side, hearing none.
I do have one agenda item to bring up. It surfaced at the Historic Preservation Committee meeting that I attended yesterday.
Okay.
I would ask when you would like me to share that. I can do it at the end
Is
or
it something that could fit in general discussion or does it need to be on the agenda?
it could fit into general discussion.
Okay, we'll just use it back then we're not changing the agenda.
That is fine. Thank you.
Then could I hear a motion to accept this agenda as it reads? Jerry motions to it, and Al seconds it.
I'll second it, yeah,
And Al
that'll work.
seconds it.
thank you.
All those in favor,
All right,
opposed? Hearing none, agenda works. Approval of minutes, and I see the date on these minutes. Rebecca is July 6th, and that's the only ones on here. Are
No,
there others?
I sent them a few days ago and I can print copies later. I just wanted to, but I did October's regular meeting, October's budget meeting and July. I still have August, September and whatever meetings before that that didn't get transcribed as well.
Okay, did the board read those? Are there any questions or any questions about those? Are we ready to approve those minutes?
Bourne will move to approve them as written,
Okay, and that would be July 6th.
July 6th, yeah.
Rebecca, this next day. July 6th, and what other dates?
October, the regular meeting of October. TDA and the budget meeting that was the Friday after. Just the two October
Okay, so
meetings.
that would be the October 5th meeting. And the budget meeting, what was October 12th?
I think it was the second and the fifth, correct? Because it was a few days.
Oh, because we did it on that Friday, that's right, that's right. Okay, let me get back to October, so that would be the 7th.
I do have one question for Mr.
Friday.
Good,
Was the 8th.
and that is, do you remember in the July meeting, who made the original motion to elect you as vice chair? Because I could not recognize the voice. I know the second, but can you remember by offhand? Anyone?
You know, I don't.
I'll just try to listen again and try to catch this.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, so then those meetings are October 5th and October 8th, which was the Friday. After the council meeting.
That sounds correct.
When we appointed our new treasurer. So those are the three that we have a motion on the table for. Do I hear a second? Jerry seconds that to approve those three meeting minutes. Any discussion about them?
Just a point of clear, I'm going to abstain because I wasn't at those meetings, part of the board at that.
Okay. You got that?
Yes,
David?
ma'am.
Okay. So do I hear all those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. I don't hear an aye from all of them, so I guess that would be more abstaining. So we'll do a hand vote. Start with you, Matt. Do you accept those meetings?
Yep.
Matt does, Al does, Jerry does, I do. Dave abstains.
I'm still looking at the calendar. So we have the July 6th, I agree with. The October 5th. Is that
Yes.
that one? I agree with that one. And then the last one was,
October 8th.
Yes, that was correct.
okay, I agree with all.
And you, yes, yes, okay, so it's unanimous. Okay. Then we have approval of the minutes, and we need to discuss Mike Williams negotiating agreement. Rusty, I saw the email that you sent with Mike Williams, and I thought that was horrible. We do have an active person that is interested in developing our site. Granted, he had some problems right in the beginning, couldn't seem to put it together. COVID did not help. Now he has a new larger firm interested in looking at the Woodland Station property. And we need to try to help hang on to him because he's the only game in town. And we need to try to hang on to him until they at least have an
At this point, right
opportunity to
here.
put something more together to present to us. This is what we have that you have been given.
Well, before you go past on my email, can we pull up the email and tell me what
I
you
want to
object to?
finish what I'm saying.
That's fine, but I would like to know, and everybody on the board should be allowed to see the email that you're talking to.
And I would like to move forward with this, this proposal and this exclusive negotiating agreement, if the board agrees, to at least give them an opportunity to try to negotiate with the adjoining people and to put their plan together. They have said that they would like to meet with us in an executive session in 3 to 4 weeks is their projection, sooner if possible, but probably would be 3 to 4 weeks. To meet with us to present some thoughts on their plans, and that would be an executive session. So I need some discussion on this.
I would like to bring up and read the email that you object to, and I would ask
Okay,
for the
you can
record,
read it.
then I would ask that you point out what you object to, because all I did is read to him or summarize the results of the planning meeting that he attended with the planning department and the fire department. Dear
You
Mr.
all got it.
Williams,
Okay, you're reading it. Good.
in reviewing the thread and your thoughts from Tony's actions in my email, I'm going to offer my perspective on what needs to move forward, what is needed to move forward with a project. I believe the first thing is to separate your project's requirements from the Paul Benedetti relationship. The DDA board will work through the relationship going forward with Mr. Betty and will be addressed by the board as a separate action. Regarding your project, the DDA members need to see what you are offering. As a reference point, the new board members have access to the files that were turned over by the previous custodian of record, so they have an ability to review the files on your project. However, they may not know where to start. I have poured through countless documents, and I have to say it is a confusing file folder. Sifting through the documents, I think it would be safe to say that the most recent concept is one that you showed approximately 1 year ago, but the concept has no details. If you are trying to determine what details would be needed to be added, I have to turn to a separate document that appear to be notes captured by a DDA board member documenting a meeting, possibly 2 meetings, that took place between George Christensen and the planning department staff and the fire department chief Lambert. While the first meeting notes don't have a date, it appears the second meeting was on June 7th, 2020. Here is the gist of the notes that I believe the board would want you to address. Recreation and amusement uses are allowed with the specific exception of glamping and mini golf. These are not allowed in a commercial business district. I suspect axe throwing may be questionable, but isn't explicitly disallowed because it isn't covered in our code. As a side note, I did reach out to the mayor pro tem to get her take on axe throwing. I believe there may be an issue with that. You may want to state what you are asking the board to do, i.e. champion a code change, strike the glamping, mini golf, axe throwing, support your request to the city council for a municipal code change. B, the need for a detailed narrative of uses, building sizes, heights, architecture, the general description, traffic flow, utilities. Keep in mind that uses and sizes will drive parking formulas. C,
Rusty, please let me interrupt, because that we have moved past that. This is a new group.
I understand you objected to this email. I'm trying to find out what you object to.
The whole email, because we've moved past that. We have a new group, new people. George Christensen isn't in this, and we have a new group to bring back and require him to do all of this. They're going to do this with the new group. All they're asking for is an extension so that is, let me read it again. An
You're
exclusive
confusing-
negotiating agreement.
Mary Jo, you're confusing the board's actions and the planning department's actions.
No,
I wrote up what the planning department provided to him,
I know.
to George.
I know, and that was with George, and he knows that, and we all know that, but we've moved past that. And now they need to do that same thing through the planning department with this new group, and that's why they want to meet with us in 3 to 4 weeks to cover that with us.
I fully understand your point. My point to you, and I want you to address it, is what do you disagree with or object to my email? It was a suggestion to Mr. Williamson on what he might want to present and talk to the new board.
Yes, Jerry, yes, you can.
I may be mistaken, but at what point did you become the representative for the board?
I did not. I was responding to an email that was presented by Mike Williams. It was just an email response.
My whole interpretation of that email was as if you were the new boss and you were setting the tone. That's the way it came across.
Okay, to the rest of the board members, I was not trying to
Okay,
subvert
finish
your,
reading what you have to say, and then we'll move on.
well, I'm not going to continue to read. It's not necessary. All I did is give back to him what the planning department and the fire chief said about this plan. And I asked him to address the issues brought up on his plan and just talk to us about it, how he was going to address that. That's all my email was intended to do.
Okay, so we're moving on. Can we have some discussion on an exclusive negotiation agreement so that this new group can move on with their due diligence and their studies? So discussion, please, from the board. Jerry?
I'll start it off. I think that there's been a lot of groundwork already been laid in that regard. And I don't think it's fair to Mr. Williams or the DDA board as a whole to just discard that at this time. He's put a lot of effort to get this far, and I don't want to see it undermined. I'd like him to be able to fulfill his agreement, his goal. And if he doesn't, well, then so be it. But at this point, I think we need to ride the horse we got.
Okay, any other discussion? Matt?
Not right this minute.
Okay, John, anything to say? Al? John?
The comment that I might make is I've been through many presentations over the, last 2 decades. I'm willing to go one more and see what can come of it.
Thank you. With the new group, so hopefully this one will work.
Hopefully, this is the one that can put something together. Yeah. if they find that that is not going to be a viable project for them, and they must retain that option, then we have to look at a different methodology. Yeah. So
Agreed.
I'm willing to be patient a little bit longer.
Thank you. David, do you have any comments?
Just clarify that I understand that we're looking to enter into an agreement that gives them 90 days of negotiation, during which time they're going to present us, more detailed concepts and clarifications of what they're trying to do. And I think if they act in good faith and move forward towards that goal, that's kind of what we foresee with that property and kind of what we're trying to promote.
Yes, and I do know for a fact that they were here last week and did walk the property with the new interested developers. They did walk the property, they did see the town, they did interact, and they were pleased, I heard. Rusty?
Please ask your question again. If you're asking me what I think about entering into an exclusive at this point in time, I am not in favor of an exclusive until I see two things. The financials that support this is a viable project, that it's going to not cost the citizens subsidies into the future, and that the revenue generated from every single element of his proposal will, in total, cover the infrastructure costs and the maintenance of those infrastructure costs forever. That's what I've read books that was provided when I became a city council member on municipal planning. That's the thing they stress, that when you approve a project, it's got to cover the costs today and into the future, the maintenance costs. And it boils down to how much revenue per square foot is what they talk about. I'd want to see the financial numbers if this is a
And that's what they
viable.
want to do in 2 to 3 weeks.
That is
3 to
fine.
4 weeks for
And
us.
the second thing, since this is the exact plan that was
No, it's not
reviewed,
exactly. It's a concept of what they're thinking of. They're putting together their exact plan that they want to present to us at a later date.
so we do not even have a concept plan.
All we're asking is to give them 90 days to put it together.
No, because it throws cold
Okay.
water on any other projects that might be thinking about coming forward.
Tony?
Yeah, I don't know currently of any projects, Rusty, so I hear what you're, I do have a hard time because signing an agreement where we haven't seen an updated presentation, which is going to come in 2 or 3 weeks. But I also have a concern, as a new board member, I'm not sure what we've talked to Mr. Williams about in his group, what we've promised, what we haven't promised. Frankly, I don't see much risk in giving them 90 days at this juncture, even though I do not like the idea of signing an agreement prior to actually seeing the presentation in a few weeks. Can they wait for a few weeks and give us the presentation and then let us consider that right away during executive session?
We'll ask him.
Okay.
Pardon?
Well, this agreement was drafted over a year ago. So I'm not sure what the urgency now for 90 days and what that and that does for us. We don't know who the developers are, and this organization doesn't exist. So I would say, let's see something in person. As far as I can recall, Mike Williams has been here once in what, 2.5 years now.
Well, he's been here several times, but this is really, he hasn't,
I mean, in a
because of
meeting.
COVID, he didn't have an opportunity to really put together a program. Mike, would you like to say something to this questions?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. for the opportunity once again to address the board, and I've been waiting patiently for a little over 11 hours. I didn't get the note.
Hold on, Mike. We can barely hear you. Can we? Is
Oh,
there
okay.
any way
Let
to
me
get it?
bring it a little closer. I said I've been
Okay.
waiting for online for 11 hours. Just a joke. I didn't get the note. that it's been moved tonight. There are several things that I would like to address concerning Mr. Neal and both Mr. Perry's comments. And I guess Mr. Weatherford as well. And that is that I'd like to go back and briefly in just a moment, maybe read some from the March minutes of the DDA that was
I cannot
presented
understand.
and
Mary Jo.
comment.
We're having a little bit, Mike, still having a little bit of trouble making out what
try
you're
to volume
saying.
up a little bit here. Let's see. Let's see.
Can you get a little closer to the microphone?
Yeah, I'm trying. This is my wife's.
Oh, that's better.
laptop, and so, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to address some of those comments. First of all, let me say that Mark Crozier and myself, we have been at multiple DDA meetings, Mr. Weather. I can count at least 4, I believe, and been online as I still reside part of the time in Tennessee for at least another 3. So I have been there several times. But Mark Crozier, and we've also attended other meetings that we were invited to city-wise as well. I believe Mr. Bourne was in one of those that we met with an architectural development firm in the city council conference room. So we've certainly been involved. But a little over a week ago, I met on site with the CEO of our managing partner and was there, and the vice president of business development. As I've mentioned before, who will gladly come forward at the appropriate time. They don't really care to, for many different reasons, to get their name in the paper yet at a public meeting. But as mentioned before, they typically handle projects and have handled many between $10 and $70 million. They recently were working on a project that exceeded $500 million, and that's billion with a B. In fact, I think the number was around 680 million to be more exact. So these are not small hope-to investors, and also they're involved in the actual project management and some of the construction as well. Why are they interested in such a small project as Woodland Station? Well, twofold. Their mission and purpose closely aligns with ours, so we feel like we have a good connection there. And it's also, since they reside in Denver, Colorado Springs, and other surrounding areas, very familiar with the area, love Woodland Park, and have always wanted to see something happen in this area. And they have connections and perhaps even clients in the specific region. A couple of things they had projected. We did walk the property for 3 hours. We looked very closely at the drainage issue with the fountain headwater problem. And they had some ideas that perhaps could be addressed there, maybe even turning that into a feature, but it is going to be an expensive development project for that. One of the things that they kind of mentioned is even this 3 weeks executive session and whatever else to produce concepts. So let me try to put it this way. They're very effective at market analytics and finding out what will work for an area. They also are very effective for letting the process work and rule out, including zoning laws, etc., what won't work, such as perhaps some miniature golf or some of the other things that were mentioned both in the email and just immediately by Mr. Neal and others. So, and what they're asking for is they're saying, okay, this property has not been developed in 20 years. And for the most part has a pretty ugly history associated with it, with many different accusations, many different directions from its very inception. Mr. Bourne's notes would say back when I read them back, let me mention some of the comments that were said by him in the, a little hard for me to read. This doesn't have the best lighting in this room, so hang with me just a minute here. Mr. Bourne stated that all of the issues together with this property are so insurmountable that the likelihood of that anyone would take on a development in its entirety would be to give the dirt for free, and property tax generation would be the mechanism to come out from the debt associated with the property. He instead encouraged, and I appreciate your comments today, Al. I realize they do not longer reflect this, and thank you for your consideration of entertaining one more proposal. I really appreciate that. But at the time, you'd recommended that the DDA become a developing agency to break the property up for resale into pieces. Mr. Good asked, did he contact an agent list concerning the property, to which Mr. Bourne said that he had contacted three listing agents, or three agents, who refused to list the property. Now, if I'm being understood correctly, one of the VP of development told me, he says, Mike, understand that closing on a property like this is probably a year process. We're not talking about the closing of a house in 30 or 45 days. There's much research that needs to be done. And he says the time that it's going to allot, as well as the production, everybody likes pictures. We all enjoy that. I worked in the home industry for many years, and everybody wants to see elevations and finishes. However, elevation and finishes don't make a house. What makes a house is mechanical. Nobody's ever impressed with the plumbing rough end, and yet we know how functional and important that is. What the VP of development said is, he says, we are probably entertaining $100,000 to $200,000 in drawings and civil engineering, before which time we can let the market analysis actually work and discover the best uses of the property. Now, I understand that in a recent meeting for tourism, I think Mary Jo, you were present, perhaps, I don't know if other parties here were or not, that in that particular meeting, the return from the questionnaire put out to the community and maybe abroad was that 80% was interested in tourism. We are projecting ideas that include, and I think, we're discussing the vagueness of the concepts, and yet at the same time to understand, to produce this profitable performa that that Mr. Perry would like to see. We're talking, somebody's got to come up with $100,000 to $200,000 worth of work. Now, given the history of the DDA, and that's not meaning any reflection on any present member, but given the history of this board, is there anyone there that would tell me, without an exclusive negotiating agreement, that, well, I'll ask Mr. Perry, without an exclusive negotiating agreement, will you loan us $150,000 to find out what the best use of the property is?
No.
Okay, so you see what you're asking, correct? Second of all, in addition to that, there were two things that were asked by our developers. The first was concerning Mark and I and any other members of the team. He said, you've got to ensure me that you don't have any pet projects. For example, a miniature golf, because we may not be able to get it through for multiple reasons, or it may not even work in the area. They may say that's too seasonal when we do our studies. So it says, number one, our team can have no pet projects. Now, we want entertainment, we want retail, we want hospitality housing. We also, in addition, want hospitality housing. We also want housing for the community. And this particular group is really a group that is all about sustainable housing. In fact, they've done quite a bit of research. One of the members of our investment team is an attorney with 25 years in transactional corporate law, and he formerly served as CEO of an oil and gas company with 4,000 wells. He acts as their general counsel and partner, and he's highly involved in these sustainable, in researching and doing other things, such as, I think, the last DDA meeting, we had a discussion about grants for sustainable housing. He will probably be working in that particular area. So we're interested because one of the things they've said they've noted in almost every small town or small city they've worked at is that housing costs are going so high that the important parties that are pertinent of their importance to the local community, such as the fire department, the police department, and local teachers, can't afford housing. So they have a big heart for that, and they want to find out how might we be able to incorporate that into the process. Now, when we presented and so the last time that I sent the email that would serve as one of these exhibits, I don't recall if it's A or B or 1 or 2. I didn't have opportunity to review the document. Or one includes a bubble overlay. We had worked with some of the members of this board had approved John Romero of NES Architects in Colorado Springs, working with us to help develop as far as we could. John came to us multiple times at which he would say, guys, I think you're off course. He said, by presenting, you're too early presenting concepts. He says, you need to wait until the master plan is in development and you've had a chance to do infrastructure and civil engineering before you will know what will work conceptually there. And so you have two different plans. One of them shows a miniature golf. One of them shows entertainment, retail. You remember the bubble overlay? Perhaps y'all have that. That was sent to y'all last month after our last meeting, I believe. And Mr. Romero, who does this process for a living, says, if you go about this backwards, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot for several reasons. Number one, you may constantly be jumping ship. You may say, we're going to put this in here and this one is going to look like. And then you later on find out it doesn't fit, or it isn't the appropriate fit, or it's not financially sustainable after doing a performer. So he says, you've got the process backwards. Instead, you need to do a bubble overlay, which previously the negotiating team, which I did have a two-party negotiating agreement team, which is neither party, no longer part of this board. So you have no way of knowing that without reviewing the notes, had agreed that by presenting I guess they call it the bubble overlay there with not concepts, but principles, with presenting principles that we can, and allow the room to allow the process, which is a very expensive process, which they're willing to engage in good faith with the right information parlayed, that they're willing to enter into beginning to start the process. So we can't tell you how tall a building is going to be. We can't even tell you which building is going to be there. And in fact, maybe these backwards approaches in the past have somewhat been reflective of why there's not been success. Now, this group knows how to do it. We also had an architect that was hired by the DDA. That was not my architect. He was not my suggestion. He was hired by, I don't know how the DDA voted on it. And he also said that coming up with concepts is not the process to go through this properly. So we're simply just trying to follow that idea. Now, they ask of us, our developers ask of us, there could be no pet projects, which we've never had anyway. But they also said, we also need to know that there are not 1 or 2 board members or more that have an agenda of saying, we have taboo projects, or we're really more in favor of becoming of chopping the property up and doing something with it that really don't want a master plan developer to come in and decide what's best. Now, again, the focus will be entertainment, retail, hospitality housing, and also housing itself. So those are the concepts that we want to introduce. But to go farther than that, can anybody else see the wisdom in that is putting the cart way before the horse? And yet we're being asked to produce this, which will come at great expense and at length of time before you'll say, well, we might just decide to chop it up and sell it out from under you tomorrow. Does anyone else see the concern with that?
Okay, Mike. Thank you. Do you have some questions? Tony?
Well,
Yeah, Mr. Williams. So when you walked the property this week, have you had discussions on your rough guesstimate projection of traffic count?
no, sir, that's too early also.
Okay. And no, I
Thank you for the
definitely,
question.
I definitely understand the efficacy of the position you're coming from with respect to a master developer and how that might be approached. So you're saying that if we sign this agreement on faith, in 3 weeks, we're going to find out more details that will
I have 3 or 4 weeks.
justify that faith?
No, I think, you know, that at one time, the VP of development did say that perhaps could we enter into an executive session to talk? Tony, I don't even think they can probably get anything going within 3 weeks. So I'm sorry if I somehow misled Mary Jo. I didn't mean that. It was more so they just wanted to have a private session that wasn't going to go public. To have such a discussion, that was the only, but as far as thinking that. Now, one of the things that was told me initially about the 3 months, when the document said 3 months, that was
Yes.
relayed to me when that was the first draft was sent back to me. They were saying, and we obviously understand and appreciate and will do, is they've said, you know, we need to see some understanding of that funding can acquire. Mr. Weatherford brought that question up again tonight. And part of what you would say would be within that first 3 months of the document being agreed to is we would produce some proof of funding. And I believe that would be subject to the follow-up. Now, I want to point out one other thing, even though it may be somewhat uncomfortable, you know, with the thoughts given that if 3, and I do believe they were, if 3 commercial or realtors who want to make a living were approached to list this property and they all 3 refused, then a withholding to not give the only party around that's bringing a master plan and a big developer, it kind of looks like the dog guarding the bone. And what I mean by that is Mr. Bourne's comments reflected there's no meat on this bone. The only interest in protecting it would be that the dog themselves is going, I want this, I'm holding it for another purpose. Now, here's what my guys are saying. I need to know, and we need to know in full faith that when we come up with a great idea and something that meets the criteria and that can pass zoning laws and can sustain the traffic flow and won't create further traffic problem, when we create that, we got to know in good faith that the people sitting there representing that have the power to say yes or no are going to say yes. And that is somewhat still in question.
Well, I think what I hear you saying is with this conceptual layout that we have a copy of, that we shouldn't get too bogged down in the particulars, because to your point, some of these ideas may not fly with zoning or with the city council or planning. And I think that's what Mr. Neal tried to point out, was that there were some concerns with the initial conceptual layout. But what you're really asking for is basically 3 months to have a master developer come to us with a overall plan that's executable, that you're convinced there's funding available, that they're serious about this, and they may not have all the pieces figured out yet, and maybe some of that's fleshed out during the analysis of what will actually go. You asked me if I would give a loan without the contract, and I would say that I probably wouldn't give a loan without the developer putting the $200,000 in, if that's the number. But I think I get what you're saying. I appreciate that you're not trying to tell us that you have the concepts down yet, other than you believe you have a team together that's motivated, that can execute if they come up with a plan that makes sense. And is it your understanding with reading this contract that even if we give you an exclusive 90-day contract to negotiate, that your due diligence may cause you to deselect yourself, or this board may not be comfortable with the concept, and you're okay with taking that risk if we do in fact give you a 90-day exclusive?
Correct, and thank you, Tony, that's very well stated and reiterated. So yes. Now, what I want to also appeal to is that any of you that have been in development know that 90 days is nothing. I mean, especially with holidays coming, Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's nothing. My question is, unless you're ready to, unless it's already been pre-decided by anyone that the property's going to be chopped up and sold to the highest bidder, or you have another concept in mind, and I guess I would propose it this way: if there is a preferable way that would make the board more comfortable with this process, we need to be working together. And all we want to know is there sincerity for wanting a master plan developer that can make this happen, or is there not? Can you want our confidence, but we also need yours. And we believe this can happen. They like the property. They honestly looked at us and said, for engaging this group of people, you're crazy, based on this history. And obviously 3 realtors felt the same. So you can see some of the dilemma or concern that we would share. 90 days, the only thing I would ask, and if you guys want to have further discussion and decide this 90 days, all we're asking is, because we want to begin. We want to begin the process of study. And what we really want to know is, we want a thorough, honest report that, hey, if you come up with something that's good for Woodland Park, we're going to push it through, not hold it back. And that no one board member or more will be allowed to do so. Now, honestly, we've got, for example, you don't even know who these party is right now. I could be fabricating all of that, but I've got better things to do. So, at one time it was asked, was Mike Williams even real? Well, I am. I'm here and I'm real and I'm serious. And so is this party. I can tell you, them coming up and giving 6 hours of their time, we really wouldn't want to know what that would cost us for consultation. So they're serious. But tell us how you want to go. If you don't like that plan, or if you're going to pinch it and go, we don't, you didn't produce all of the drawings in 90 days. If that's going to be the case and you're just looking for a way to knock us out, look for a way to help us and give us your confidence. Or otherwise, tell us this is not really our goal. One of the two.
Mike, can I interrupt a minute?
Yes, ma'am. I'm
Mike
done.
asked for 6 months for an executive negotiation agreement, and Paul Benedetti put 3 months in here. So they did ask for 6 months, and Paul put 3, and we could do an extension at the end of 3 if we liked the way it was going, just so the board knows that. And so you do too, Mike.
Can I make a comment, Mike?
Yes,
And that is, some may perceive these delays and getting the ball rolling with you and all as a detriment. Honestly, I see it as very wise, and it's a positive feeling coming from me, because until you had your ducks in order, you didn't try to make things happen. And I believe there's a good sign that I think you made the right move, and I'm very much comfortable in signing this agreement.
But thank you, Mr. Wood.
okay, John, do you have anything to say? I heard you agreeing over there with some things.
I don't see a line of people waiting to come in and do anything with the property. And they are, I say give them the 90 days or 120 days or whatever it takes. I think it's fine.
Matt?
I'm okay with giving them some time. I'd like to, in the 90, if they need a little more time, I understand that. I'd like to see something, a little more tangible, a little more real come back that we can see and weigh in on.
And it'd be nice to meet them.
Absolutely. And I know they would like that meeting
Right.
with a signed document. Again, as Mrs. Rutherford mentioned, we haven't even bothered to make that a Colorado entity yet. Been no need in it. We've had no feeling of sense of support from the board. And honestly, these investors have just come forward that we've made connection with them. I believe the first contact was in April, but the first meeting was not much over a month ago. So I understand some of your concerns. I'm just asking, what do you have better? What do you have to lose if we don't either perform or we come back and said, this whole property, the property as a whole is not worthy of this kind of development? Then at that point, you can go, okay, after 20 years of deliberation, we finally see we need to take a completely different route, and perhaps Mr. Bourne's suggestion would be a good idea. And we understand that's a plausible probability. I trust the insight of these guys enough that it's not, because they have many successful projects under their belt, and their only reluctance, to be honest, now they know it's going to be expensive. They looked at it and said, one of them owns a grading company and excavation company, and he looks at it and he says, $1.5 million of moving dirt right here. So we understand this is not going to come easy or cheap, but we need to know that if this is the way the board wants to go for a master plan, I think this is the best shot you've ever had to date of it happening. And
Okay.
as soon as we know it,
Let me see, Mike, because is this board ready to maybe make a decision on this? Rusty has something to say, but are we basically ready to move forward on this?
I have some comments
Rusty?
also. after
Okay,
this.
Dave. Rusty?
Mike, I'm sorry that people have taken my email as trying to throw cold water on your project. I sit on the board here with two hats. I sit on this board and I sit on city council. 2 years ago, I reached out to you and said, and whispered to you kind of in a telephone call, email saying, would you like to find out what some of the other council members think of your plan? Because this is the same plan that's been batted around for 2 years, because I've had conversations with some of the other council members. and you have to get the project approved by the DDA board and the city council. I have been trying to point out what things you might want to look at and change that would help you get a project through both this board and the council. The items I put in the email are the things the planning department is going to present to the council and to, I think it's going to go to the planning commission first. I'm not sure the process on this particular piece of land because it falls under some different rules. But there are some things that will have to be approved by the city council or changed by the city council. And probably 2/3 of your plan, if you take the northwest and the southeast sections, you'll probably get a lot of support by both the DDA and possibly the city council. When you look at the southwest quadrant, assuming Woodland Station is broken into 4 quadrants, we know that the hardware is one of the quadrants that's already developed. I have brought it up to previous DDA board members when I was simply a city council member. What did I think the possibility of the city council changing some things that are on this that would need to be changed? And I gave my opinion. I would not support one of them, and I didn't think any council members, I didn't think 4 council members would approve certain things. How much money are you willing to spend before you kind of get some guidance from both this body and the city council? Because you're going to spend what, $100,000 to bring something to this board, and then when are you going to bring it to city council and get some feedback from them? It's a rhetorical question. You don't have to
No, I
answer.
would like to answer this. I'd like to answer it, Mr. Dan, please, if I could. Because I think it's a very valid question, as I did your previous questions that were addressed to me in the email and I addressed back to you. Each of those would be answered in time. We are, the team that I am associated with myself that initially came, you did reach out to me and ask me to would I consider meeting with you guys. Number one, Mr. Christensen was only acting as a consultant because he was acting as my personal realtor for purchasing a property for residents and for rental. So that meeting, I think that was just, the fire chief happened to be in there, was my understanding. And concerning your question that came to me about would I meet with you because everyone wanted to see housing. Again, we recognize at that point I had several local players to the East Coast, well, actually to Tennessee and the Smoky Mountains that were looking at being a part of it. They had the financial depth, however, and they had some experiential knowledge, especially working with boards. One was a part of a village board in Illinois, I believe. So they had some experience that were going to be helpful, but we were still trying to develop our team. So, and I think I perhaps even addressed you saying that we're still very much in development of our team. And so I could bring players who may not even be a part of it when we're ready to do it. So that was the delay. We do understand the importance of city council and the city abroad, as well as the residents all buying in. That's an important, very important factor. And we're in no way trying to withhold anyone. And I'm very certain from understanding the character and the experience and depth of our investors that they will very much want to be from a very early on, want to be engaging, getting feedback, because these guys didn't get where they're going by push. They're not come in, let's bulldoze you over. That's not them. We are focused on community development that benefits every aspect of society that we can. In fact, they're going to be saying, what what do you propose? What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? Can you give us any feedback to date? What are your concerns? Those are the kind of developer investors we found. So they're much more savvy at answering any of the concerns and questions that you, Mr. Perry, or Mr. Weatherford have raised 100 times more than me, and have done so. They've worked with multiple agencies, whether we would call them political or city agencies or whatever, and worked very direct with them being able to do it. So to answer that question is, they're not going to throw $100,000 at this project and not talk with you, city council, or anyone else that we're allowed to talk to. Is that sufficient to answer your question?
Well, yes, because that's a very smart business answer. Nobody's going to spend $100,000 without talking to both parties that are going to be making the decision. So thank you for.
And again, I reiterate, our only delay has been readiness on our part. So I beg your pardon or misunderstanding or anyone else that we tried always to project. We've got some ideas, we've got some concepts. We believe, I have enough connections in this area of Tennessee that I thought we were going to be able to pull it off. And then fortunately, we came up with a group that was many times more capable and with deep enough assets to make this happen. So we're very fortunate. But one of the questions that I've posed many times is, we lost some credibility with you guys, and we understand that during that year and a half. Part of that was due to COVID, which no one controlled. Part of that was due to my son's illness, with no one control. Part of that was we were very much somebody who said, we've got some ideas we think will work. They need some help. And in fact, that was our first question to our new developers. I don't know how many times in email, text, etc. I've said, now, we have no pet projects. We're open to trash all of our ideas. And we definitely have been listening to what's been said. For example, even prior to speaking with our new investors, we were already trying to figure out how we could incorporate needed housing into a master plan. And also, one of the things that one of our the vice president investors said was, they said, well, let's contact Mr. Weatherford. It's our understanding that he would like to do some homes or some type of housing there also. Let's coordinate with him so that our project can be at least have a similarity of look or style or something. Let's work early on with him to see if he has some ideas so that we can incorporate this and make it a win-win for everyone that everyone will want to approve.
Joe, I got a question for Rusty.
Okay, and then Dave
Go
has
ahead.
got some things he'd like to say. Go ahead.
Well, I think we're all pretty much aware of why the DDA was formed, and that was to circumvent Charter 917, which meant that the city was not allowed to offer incentives. And along with that, I think there are certain restrictions as far as the involvement by the city council and the decisions made by this board. I think that you might be overstepping your bounds on that.
Okay. David?
So Mike, I just like to say that I have an understanding of how much time this takes to put a project like this together, and kind of the importance of looking at this parcel holistically and looking at it, for, parity of infrastructure and utilities and everything else. So just going to run through this. Do you have consultants on board as of yet, or are you kind of waiting to see where this agreement goes to where they could jump and maybe have a quick design charrette and meet with us?
Well, they've already contacted, as far as my understanding, again, the investors. We're very fortunate in this situation. The investors have a score of relationships and connections already in place, because they have know of at least one project going, a large project going right now midway through construction. But yes, they do have civil engineers. Now the readiness, I don't know. As we all know, industry's really kind of picked up, but we're also facing a possible economic downturn that may free people more. I'm sure, and I can't really speak. I don't know if winter time is the time everybody's getting the projects cooking, so they're extra busy. So I really can't address how quickly they can. I will tell you that they don't have to begin trying to say, okay, who would we get to look at this? They have a score of contacts that usually do bids for them. So they're very well prepared to embark as quickly as the process will allow and as quickly as engineers and et cetera, architects, artists, whoever is doing. They already mentioned, for example, they mentioned the artists. They have a connection, a close connection with the artists that do renderings for the Herschel family that represents Dollywood. So they already mentioned, well, we're going to contact them and find out where they are scheduling and try to get an idea of what drawings would cost for us and that kind of thing. So there's been a little bit, but and David, I'm sorry, I don't know you. If we could more formally introduce each other. I don't recall being in a meeting with you before.
Sorry, Mike, David is our newest member. He was
Yeah,
just
I'm a new member.
appointed. Last meeting was his first meeting.
So Mike, I'm a civil engineer by trade. And
Excellent.
I know John Romero and I kind of know the timeframes. I think what we would look for, as quickly as possible is to kind of understand, get some work on the bubble drawing and understand the uses being proposed. You've mentioned residential a couple of times, and I don't see that on the bubble diagram that we have
It
at
is
this
not,
point.
that's correct.
And so it's just a better understanding of what your intended use and how that fits this, vision of the property that we've all held so close for so long to try to create that draw to downtown and kind of be that core in downtown that, I love the concept of, retail and entertainment in those aspects that you're proposing at this point. But I just like to see it flushed out and as quickly as possible so we can at least understand your intention. And I think that's probably a good step for you to see if it's supportable.
And I understand, and I've been the same way, John. Thank you for your comments. In fact, I appreciate you being on the board and having some understanding, and you'll be able to add probably some light and guidance to the process. That's important to us. I will give you this, that when I'd first made contact with these guys and started conversations, and I think perhaps I first mentioned them to the board, that may have begun late August, perhaps. And they were so busy with other projects at that time that it took about 5 weeks to get a Zoom meeting, the initial Zoom meeting with them. So I don't want to paint any, we want to do this very efficiently as possible, but I don't want to paint, given our history already of taking so long to get to this point, I don't want to paint any unrealistic expectations. However, very soon you would have access directly to these guys, and they can give you very point blank answers saying, I spoke to such and such, and they've given us this length of time, and et cetera. They're very open disclosure kind of guys. So they definitely want to be, to give you as, they want y'all's confidence as well. So this is a mutual situation where we're both saying, what can we, and the other thing I'm asking is, if this 90-day thing isn't really what works and you have a better idea, because as is mentioned before, I think by Mr. Weatherford perhaps, or Mr. Neal, but I think Mr. Weatherford, this draft is a year old. So perhaps and doesn't represent about half of the board or more that was present at that time. We're open to whatever kind of process works and makes you happy, but we also need that mutual confidence that we're not going to be undermined or undercut for whatever reason. Is that clear.
No, I understand, and I don't think I've done a project where a developer hasn't had a due diligence period where they've been able to explore the project and figure things out.
Thank you.
So I think that makes sense from that standpoint. I just think, really, you got to take these things incrementally, and, the sooner you can get us a list with acreages or, proposed uses, something as informal as that doesn't need to involve, John, putting together his watercolor graphics, just so we understand the concept you're pursuing.
Okay. And that drawing you see, or that John presented, I'm glad you know him.
Right.
That also is way over a year ago, at which time, I think it was probably right about that time that Mr. Neal reached out to me. So at that time, we were entertaining how we might include some housing, but yet, as you can see, it wasn't, it hadn't
Hey,
been
Mike, we've got
discussed.
some more questions from Tony.
No, just a comment. First of all, I think, I've been watching this project or this board for 20 years. And so what I would say is I feel comfortable that we have a group of professionals up here and successful business people. And so I wouldn't be too concerned that we're trying to undercut anything. I guess what I would say is I'm actually comfortable with the agreement drafted by the attorney. We don't have exhibit A or B as far as I know, and I don't know who is going to bring that up.
This is as close as it is, and we do not have an actual
Well,
present to the city.
yeah, I don't think
planner
that's what the
exhibit A.
contract's asking for, Mary Jo, but I guess what I'm gonna say is if this board agrees to the 90-day due diligence period, if you will, or exclusive due diligence period, and vote in the affirmative, I would say go from my perspective that in that 90 days, we need to see something material to give you an extension. So
Understood.
that would be the caveat that I would throw out, that doesn't mean that you have to have it all figured out. But to Mr. Maharis's point, something material, because I've stated for 20 years that, this property needs a master developer with a pocketbook. And you're saying this developer has the pocketbook and the skill set and the connections and the desire and the heart for this project. And it's only 90 days. It's going to go quicker than we would like. So I'm not averse to it. I think Exhibit A is really asking for something we've talked about at a previous meeting, which is kind of like, and I think we have it. I think we have 2 drawings from 2 different architects on the property itself. Exhibit B, I'm not sure about what constitutes the improvements and how the cog fits in there and the other assets, the picnic tables, those kind of things. So,
And Tony, in all honesty, neither are we. Although we're trying to do that. That brings me back. I'd like to address Mr. Neal's previous comment about what he was saying about some of the council, certain sections. Mr. Neal, I'm not even sure that that the concepts may lay in, even on the bubble overlay, in the same area because of the headwater concern and many different issues. Those may move as well. And they may change. So and I see you guys are catching on to that very well. And I appreciate your comment, Tony, about us having confidence in the professionalness of the board. Tongue in cheek, we might have to come back to you for a $150K loan after all. Based on your
Okay, well, Mike,
confidence.
we have got a really full agenda, so
Yes, ma'am.
can I move on and is this board prepared to make a motion to sign this extension agreement for them to move forward for 90 days? I would like to do a roll call vote on this. Rebecca, you ready for that?
need a motion first.
Okay, I know. I just want to give you a heads up on that. Do I have a motion that this,
I motion that we approve the agreement. with McWilliams.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Born on second.
Okay, Born seconds it. Is there any more discussion before we take a vote?
Yeah, I guess I would observe what David asked about made points. We don't have an exhibit A and B, and a lot of that is what you're talking about. So I'm not opposed to giving them 90 days, but this contract contemplates having that in hand, which we don't. So I would suggest they come make a proposal, and that would be A and B, and we could sign it at that time.
Just a
Yeah,
clarification, I
Joe.
think exhibit A is just the legal description of the property.
Exhibit A exists
Yes.
Yeah, I think it does.
And so we just need the exhibit B.
in question.
Mary Jo, I think you
Yes,
had
Al.
one of the exhibits because I gave that to you last meeting.
That was the legal, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Mhm,
that's the legal.
mhm, So we have.
So we
the-
do have that one.
Yes, we
That's
do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we amend this motion to say that we would sign this contract, including exhibit A and excluding exhibit B for 90 days at this time? Can we amend that
Would
motion?
Mr. Williams agree to that?
Would you agree to that, Mike?
That you repeat it exactly again, Mary Jo?
Well, we have a motion to sign this contract as is, but it's requiring an exhibit A and an exhibit B. We have the exhibit A, but we don't truly have the exhibit B. So if we could make the motion to sign this contract, including exhibit A and excluding exhibit B for 90 days.
I would agree to that with the exception of I'm gonna need to get with the investors. Because they had said, can we paint a path forward? For example, what will you have to have at the end of 90 days to continue forward?
Well,
So if there could be a small list, as minimal as possible, that shows definitely an attempt at, or an effort, a sincere effort at progress, but yet at the same time, it's not so daunting that no one could fulfill it. Then that would be helpful. And I know they would like to see in fact what that would be, what those clauses would be for continuance. And then they also ask at the end of 6 months, what's the, so I think there's work to do on our end, but you guys are a new board and just deciding new positions. I think there's some work to do on your end as well. And I do really appreciate what I see coming together tonight, by the way. Thank you. I am seeing an effort for everyone to
Okay.
become congruent and do this. But I think if there were some decisions as to what is going to, modest exhibit B, since it's not a definitive.
Dave, can I
diagram.
ask you, hang on, Mike, can I ask you, does that sound reasonable since you are in the developing processes? Does that sound reasonable to
It does.
include the exhibit B until for 90 days?
It does at this point, because I think, or you can look at substituting the concept plans if we're happy with that as their general intention of development. But I think there's some flaws in the concept plan that we might
Yes.
get into minutia of. And so I think it's preferable to not have the exhibit B and strike it from the contract, with our goal to be at 90 days, to have something that we are all, happy with moving forward with. Because, I assume, moving forward, you'll be looking for an extension in 90 days if you're pursuing the project.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no way it would be.
Okay, then let me ask you this, could you revise your motion, Terry?
Yeah, revise it to exclude exhibit B.
B for 90 days and then readdress it.
As long as you're okay with that, Mike.
You okay with that, Mike?
Yes. Would it be possible? And again, I know you have a full agenda and it'd be difficult, but I think it'd be advisable to then define what the objectives are and put them in writing as to the continuance of the second 90 days. So that nobody's really facing any surprises or at the business meeting, the regular DDA meeting 3 months from now, we're not then deciding what those parameters are and whether or not we perform them.
Right.
So he's saying he wants something in writing.
So you wanted in writing what Exhibit B needs to look like in 90 days.
No,
Is
he
that
wants
what
to
you're
know what,
asking
he
for?
wants to know what we're asking him to come up with in 90 days
That's
in
what I just
writing.
said. Yeah.
That's not exhibit B. He's talking about what do we, if I hear it right, he wants to know
Yes, sir,
what
you
we're
do.
expecting from them in 90 days.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
understand that. What our intention would be is, at least from my perspective, I'd like to see a flushed out, concept plan. Not the details that would be required to go to the next phase, which I would call development plan. You're gonna have, a bubble drawing with densities and, some concept of building heights and scope and open space and those ideas. It's more within the planning range than getting into the details of architecture or civil engineering at that point. I think that's a goal that would be, hard to get to in that point, but I think it's feasible to get that. I'd also like to see at least a meeting with the consultant team and the DDA so that we can, really, help point you in the direction we see, the vision we have. And, also understand the vision you have in moving this property forward. But I think those are, some goals that we can shoot for. I think, really what we'd be looking at in that 90 days is at that point, you may be looking for the other extension and we'd want to understand the project at that point and then probably set goals for that future extension. I think, for this first 90-day period, there's a lot of work that you're going to have to do to get that forward. And we're more than willing to grant that 90 days, it sounds like. But I think just seeing that progress happen is what we look for.
Then could I ask that we have a workshop on the 23rd of November to make that determination of what we need to give him? And some other things that
I
we
know the
need to
investors
do.
would like to see that. That would go a long way for them wanting to begin spending serious money. Or I would imagine from discussions it would. Maybe one of those that could fit in that agenda is that within those 90 days would be proof of the ability to get funding. That'll be important to you, of course. But second of all, a meeting with the investing development team.
Yeah, I think those two things. I
Right.
think what Mr. Maheras said in having at least a fleshed out concept plan that makes sense on its face and understanding who is behind this so that we have confidence that the checkbook is there, period.
Any more comments? All right, we have a motion on the table.
One more comment.
All right, one more comment.
So what is the deliverable at the end of the project? At the end of the 90 days, what is the deliverable? Because what had been the deliverable, which was the concept that was going to be flushed out, we're removing that. That's the attachment B or the exhibit B. So there's no language currently that says what is the deliverable to the DDA with this contract that you're about to vote on to enter into. I've never seen a contract without a deliverable.
Yeah, I think what he's suggesting, Mary Jo, is that the contract needs to be amended to at least include the two aspects, the one Mr. Maheras referred to and the funding aspect that the DDA board is made aware of the parties and feel confident in their ability to perform. So I think those at least need to be put in, or at least described in the contract as two deliverables by the 90 days. Mr. Williams, for us to feel confident in getting to 90 days, because this will need an extension. Let's be realistic here. But those two
I agree.
things,
We
I
don't
think
need it.
if those two conditions are met, then I would feel comfortable continuing the process.
Well, and Mr. Perry, and say the last name, Mr.
Maheras.
David. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So, yes, I think, the time for vagueness is over. And so, yes, by y'all producing at whatever time you can, what the deliverables are, that I could then forward to the investors, that they're not just my thoughts anymore. Obviously, many of these concepts and you know, they're going to support our objectives. However, they have to make sense for them to fund them and develop them. So I would really like to see what the recommended deliverables are and be able to get their sign off on it. Otherwise,
And Mike, that's fine. I think we can do that. Looking at this, you know, I think Exhibit B is, it's part of the contract, not part of the deliverables, is the way it's described in the current document. So I think we can strike that, you know, where it is now. You don't have that document at this point. And we're working towards a document. In my understanding of the concept plan is you're really trying to represent the proposed uses and the proposed densities. There's not a lot of detail to be concerned with at that aspect. We just want to understand the nature of the development you're proposing. And so we can come up with some language to describe that and put that in the contractual documents for you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
So I have a motion on the table. Al?
With regards to coming forward with our definitions of a series of deliverables, it would seem logical to me that if we have a professional group that is willing to bring this project forward, they know what the deliverable should be. And this would be a good test to see how viable a firm that they are too. So it's already baked in the cake, I think.
Right.
Well, Mr. Bourne, if I can address that, I agree with you completely. And I think they would. However, they've immediately objected, saying, you know, 3 months is nothing. 6 months, you know, and I think one of the things that was addressed to me by the VP of development, he said, I don't think we've ever entered one of these that wasn't at least 6 months to do our due diligence.
Yeah.
I believe that. So I have a motion on the table. Do we withdraw this motion or do we move forward with rewording of that motion?
You should call for the question. I wouldn't try to continue to manage the motion.
Yeah, I'm gonna withdraw my motion
Okay.
and let somebody else figure out what you guys just said.
Okay.
Okay, so we do not have a motion on the table. Do we want to make a new motion?
Would you want to try to
I'd like ask
summarize?
a question, please.
Yes, Mike?
Is it advisable that you would like the investors to propose the deliverables as Mr. Bourne has requested? Is that the route you'd feel more comfortable with? Or once again?
That's certainly what Al said. Do we hear any comment from the board?
Well, what I would say is that I think, you know, to Mr. Maharis's point, I think we can draft on our side the two deliverables that we, I think, determine are critical to move forward. Obviously, we would push that to your team and then you can help massage that so that we come to a mutual agreement on the Exhibit A and Exhibit B. And so I would feel comfortable making the motion that we proceed in good faith with getting a 90-day exclusive agreement signed with the provision that Exhibit B needs, the two deliverables that we've discussed tonight for Exhibit B need to be fleshed out and agreed upon by the DDA board and the developer prior to signing the contract.
I will second that motion. Assuming, David, you would give us the remaining language where you
Yes.
talked about the concept with densities and there are a few other things. Because Al, you're correct. These simple words, a true professional will know exactly what should be presented to us. And I think the other developers would say, yeah, that's probably.
So is
true.
that a motion?
Agreed.
Yeah, I just made it. He just
And
seconded it.
seconded. Any more discussion? We'll do a, Matt,
Nope,
Don,
No discussion.
well, I mean, a vote.
For voting.
We're voting.
yes,
So we have one no vote?
no, aye.
Aye. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, we have Matt is a yes. John?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Okay, does that suit you, Mike?
Yes, ma'am. So I guess I'll wait on that new draft or contract.
Yes.
Sent to me. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Williams, I would suggest you have your side, go ahead and throw together some language as well so we can accelerate this process for you.
Okay, will do. Well, thank
And
you all.
Dave, I'd like
Thank
to
you all
ask
for the
if
confidence.
you would spearhead that.
Yes,
move Forward,
I will.
okay?
Is that something that we can send out in an email and we can all agree to, or do we have to have a special meeting? And the 24th is like 3 weeks away.
Yeah, from my perspective,
Making sense.
with Mr. Maharis taking lead on getting the contract drafted, Rebecca can send the contract to us, and as long as we agree upon it, there's got to be a mechanism for voting electronically without having to have a special meeting. I would believe.
Yeah, I agree
There
with
is.
that. And I mean,
I
it's
mean, we could
really,
probably e-sign.
it's
it
really
or
a couple of
something.
lines of the contract that are being changed,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, the rest of the contract was fairly boilerplate. and
Right.
Straightforward.
In point of clarification for me, because I'll work on this language. As a board member, I mean, in my professional life, I work with John Romero.
Right.
Is it okay for me to work on the language with your consultant, Mike, or how does the board feel about that? To come up with something that may be amenable to both sides in a more quick manner?
I'm
I
comfortable,
would
I'm
say yes.
comfortable with
Does the
that.
rest of the board agree to that?
yeah, I
I
feel,
would say
feel like your
yes.
expertise is important in this arena.
Yeah,
So you
Mike, is
can
it
work
okay if I get a hold of
Could you repeat
John
that
on your
once again
side?
For me, sir, I think I caught the gist of it, but
I work with John Romero, and so given that we're primarily looking for a planning document and he looks to be heading up your planning team, I could work with the language on the deliverable with John, and he would in turn, clarify with you prior to us putting it in a contract. And I think it may expedite the agreement.
okay, and these guys, again, my investors will be deciding whether to continue to work with John. They may already have someone that they prefer. However, we certainly can entertain that idea, and I'll get that.
Or I can work with your preferred planning consultant if you have someone else. That's fine.
Yes, sir. Okay. Yeah, we were happy with John's work, so that's not an issue, but again, I'll just be forthright. I'm not the professional here. I'm relying on these guys, so.
Right, I'm just thinking to expedite and simplify the proposed deliverable, maybe work with the consultant to define that scope.
Mike,
Yes,
we
sir.
will make sure that Dave has your phone number and he can contact you.
Very good.
Does that
Look
work?
forward to it.
Does that work?
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
And
all
once
right,
again, thank
so,
you.
okay, then we'll move past then, and Dave will put that in your ballpark,
List.
and
Okay.
thank you.
Is there anything further you need me for this meeting?
No.
Madam President, or
No,
Thanks for your
Nobody
time,
else?
Mike.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you
gonna
for
leave.
your-
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you, and we'll talk very soon.
you bet. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
I talked to Mr. Patel. I called him to see if he wanted to be on this agenda. And he said that some things had come up and that they would probably get back with us in 3 to 6 months. So I don't know where that's going. That's all he said. Discuss Paul Benedetti. I'm not sure. There was a question that John had that Paul maybe had had heard some rumors that he had some clients in Woodland Park. And I asked Mr. Benedetti about that, and he does not. His only
That's not,
clients,
I didn't say
Okay.
that. That's
his
not the way
only
I worded it,
clients,
so.
just for the record, his only clients in Woodland Park is the DDA. And Mr.
It wouldn't be clients that I was saying, probably friendships and I think it goes a lot deeper than just a client in Woodland Park.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. And Paul Benedetti was brought to us by, and I forgot her, I just lost her name. Beth Cosley. Was brought to us by Beth Cosley, and we felt very honored to have him because he really did understand TIF, and he has helped all of the finance directors in Woodland Park that we've had to understand TIF and how that works, and he's been an asset. I do understand that we need to discuss more of his being the attorney to do our contracts. Any discussion? Tony?
Yeah, so since last meeting, I've been thinking about Mr. Neal's motion that died for lack of a second. And I think he brought up some points that I had been thinking about for a while. Again, no offense to Mr. Benedetti as an attorney. He clearly has a good reputation. My instinct observing the last several boards is that I think I would be more comfortable with searching for a different attorney to start fresh with this board and to not have the baggage. And I think what Mr. Gamelke is referring to is a perception that previous board members and maybe even current board members are maybe too close to Mr. Benedetti because of the past events. And I prefer, and I think we've already started, this feels like a professional board with professionals, with strong business people. And I think a fresh start with an attorney would be a good idea.
Jerry?
Honestly, I would have to say that it feels more like vengeance on their part.
Vengeance from what part?
Because you've both made statements in the past that what a horrible attorney was because he costs the citizen. Well, the DDA board did not initiate that lawsuit. You did. He kept the property in the citizens' hands. It's not yours. I would say that you, Tony, and you, Arden, because of your ties to Woodland Station, should have to recuse yourself on anything discussing with Mr. Bennett.
No, that's ridiculous, Jerry. You're the one that's got a personal problem here.
Excuse
And
me.
you weren't at trial. Tony and I were at the whole trial, so we saw what flushed out of that.
So what I want to address that because I'm getting tired of you making accusations towards me. Number one. Number two, what I've said in the past is that any attorney worth their salt would have seen from the beginning that this was a breach of contract case. It had nothing to do with what you think it had to do with, which is why we, the DDA, because I'm on the board now, lost that lawsuit. We, the taxpayers, the businesses in the district who paid the taxes lost those monies. So what I would say, it's not vengeance, it's not personal, it's just business. And it's about feeling comfortable with the attorney. I don't know that I trust this attorney.
Yeah, because he was your adversary.
No,
I
he
would
wasn't
like
my
to-
adversary.
Wait,
Yes,
I
he
would
was.
like to say that he was not the attorney representing the DDA
Yeah.
board at the time. He was not. He is our contract attorney. Neville, David Neville and his protege were the ones representing the DDA in that lawsuit. It wasn't Paul Benedetti. He was our contract lawyer.
So he
And
was
part
beyond
of the
contract.
reason- I'm not done. And part of the reason that there was some conflict is because there had been some contracts changed. Now we're trying to move past that because we had a lawsuit. We had a judge that decided, we knew we were gonna have to pay Arden something for moving the gas tanks. We just could not come up with the amount and what that was going to be, and it had to go through a lawsuit to determine that. That's done, that's history, water under the bridge. We need to move on. Yes, ma'am.
I think part of moving on is interviewing new attorneys, because this is going to continue coming up. We continue working with the same person. Because there's people
And
that
that is to
disagree
the
with the
pleasure of the board.
professionalism in this person. So I think it's a good idea to interview some new representation.
Yeah,
By
So-
taking and getting rid of Paul Benedetti, you also get rid of all the skeletons, everything that he knows that is pertinent to this board, you're washing that away. And you're doing it on purpose, and I disagree with you. I think this is vengeance, and I think you're wrong.
Okay, Tony,
Final, okay. So what I will say is, again, I'm not challenging Mr. Benedetti's professionalism. I'm not challenging that he's a good attorney. What I'm saying is, first of all, you are incorrect. He wasn't just the contract attorney. His scope of business is actually DDA, representing DDAs, which is more than just contracts. He is the source for this board to go to for any particular business that we may do as a DDA, not just contracts. I think he did like I said, it's pretty boilerplate, but I think this contract is fine that you put together. His work product is good. What I'm saying is what Mr. McCracken alluded to is that there is no downside to switching attorneys and starting fresh with this fresh new board with a whole different perspective. I think that is the penultimate of putting this behind us, frankly. I just observe too much, and I don't have a personal stake in this. I do not, Mr. Good. So I just think it's good business. In business all the time, we switch attorneys when our needs change, when parties change, and this is a new board, it's a new day. I just think that a fresh start would be a positive development.
okay, David, what do you think about that?
Although there's some validity to the argument of someone having history and understanding of, past scope and projects and history.
And
I think it makes sense at this point for the board to put on a new face and move forward and look at new options.
okay,
Yeah.
John,
I agree, new options.
okay, Al?
Yeah.
Okay,
A new option.
Jared?
There's nothing wrong with, we'll say, changing attorneys, getting different perspectives. It can be very enlightening to us also.
Okay.
By all means.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to terminate the existing relationship with Paul Benedetti.
I will second.
Rebecca, you got that?
Yes, sir.
Any discussion? Again, starting with Matt, vote.
Matt McCracken, yes.
John Gamelke, yes.
Born, yes.
No.
No,
Yes.
Yes.
Perry, yes.
Yes,
okay. So John, if you would notify Mr. Benedetti that he has been terminated.
Okay.
Discuss board positions. I have, according to the bylaws, officers are elected at the first meeting in July and serve until the following July. There is no provisions for special elections. Removal is provided if an officer misses 3 consecutive meetings or if city council removes an officer for cause. Officers can resign, of course, but unless there is compliance with the bylaws and statutes, there is no authority for holding special elections to replace officers. So that comes out of the bylaws. And is there any discussion on board positions?
Mary
Al?
Jo, I might reflect on something that I noticed. On the city's website, to the DDA pages, it lists the officers of our board and the various members. Interestingly, it lists John as our security officer.
Thanks, John.
And the way it was going, I wasn't too sure, but maybe that was a good thing. So if we have a security officer, yeah, John's already that. We might need to change that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so it was
Yeah,
that
we
what it
go
On
was.
the current city side?
Well,
Well, since we don't have a security officer, I guess we won't make one up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So we will, John, can you correct that?
Yes.
I don't have access to that. website.
Okay,
Oh.
Tony, can you correct that?
Yes.
We
Okay.
can.
You can't get it.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna get you a flak jacket too.
All right,
So I just wondered though,
Now-
if we can talk about this, Mary Jo,
sure.
because we are a new board and we just recently put on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new, is it 6 new members?
Mhm.
Would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. I just think that we didn't do it in July, that's true. But I still think that it warrants at least discussing about positions and the positions that people are in and whether we're comfortable with that or not, since we're a new board.
Okay,
Does anybody else agree or want to talk about this?
No, you can't come in here and just manipulate the board to whatever you feel is convenient. This year.
Just bringing it up for discussion.
There are a few standards of decorum, and it appears to me like
okay.
I'm completely against it.
Well, I would say to that, I have missed one meeting since this DDA started like 20 years ago. I've missed one meeting and I don't know if you have any comments on the way I run the meeting. This is just me. I'm not talking about Jerry as vice chairman or secretary or treasurer. I'm just talking about me, but I don't know if you have any problems with how I run the meetings. I don't know if everyone seems to get what they want on the agenda, on the agendas. Everyone gets to speak. I don't think I leave anybody out. So personally, I don't know what there would be cause on my behalf. If there is something, I would like you to tell me and I'll change it. Now, Jerry. Jerry's the vice, and so any comment on that? Then we'll go to Jerry. Any comment on that? Rusty?
You've asked the question, have you had actions that some of the board members are uncomfortable? I would have to say yes. I think you have gone outside the authority and acted unilaterally on certain items that you did not have the approval of the board. That's just a personal position on it. However, I think the language within the bylaws is quite clear. While I may be uncomfortable with it, and we can talk about it when we get to item 12, you know, if we get some assurances from you that you were being a little bit more rigid than in the past, where you may have had that authority either specified or implied. I think with this board, we would like to see a little bit more rigor in when you speak as the chair, that you do have a vote behind what you're saying. But I do believe that July is the appropriate time where we would relook any changes that would be made. I think the bylaws are correct, and I would not like to see a lawsuit. Now, I don't know who would sue us if we did something like that. John, I understand we're having the conversation. So we're putting out some discomforts. Mary Jo, it's up to you to make changes or not in July. We'll see what happens. Thank you.
Anybody else?
What you read here, is that in the bylaws?
Yes.
All right, well, I've got them here and I have not found that where the amended bylaws.
Oh, they amended on January 8th.
I have a set of bylaws here if you want to read them.
Well, I've got them on my computer here.
While they're looking that up, is there any comment down here? If I, any correction you'd like to see me do?
It's Article 3,
Section 2.
That's from section 2. You're here until July. according to the bylaws.
Yes, yeah, I agree with Mr. Neal based on my reading of the bylaws. I am the one that put in agenda item 12, because I also have observed that It's my belief with this board, my preference, and I'm just speaking for myself, that no member of this board should incur billable hours with the attorney or should go off on their own without the concurrence of the board. And I think why John brought this discussion up is I think you asked us to tell you how you could do better. What I would say is, I hate the word transparent. What I would say is view quarter. When you go to call a special meeting with the city council and the attorney within the last 2 weeks, and we don't know about it, in previous meetings, we've said that's not sanctionable. We're going to ask you not to do that again. What we're going to say is that if you want to have a council session, that you should ask the board if it's appropriate and get our concurrence.
I thought I had your concurrence in, could we set up a date, a time, and then see if that would be possible? And that's what that was. And that was the only day that he could come, and that was, that's what that was about. It wasn't calling a meeting.
Yeah.
It
Well-
was just, but I understand, and moving forward, I'll make sure it's a little more.
You know, what I would say,
Wait,
Mary Jo, as the
but-
leader, is you have a lot of talent up here. And, you don't have to carry the water bucket by yourself. You can lean on all of us to make this better for our community. And so all I'm asking is that it's all on the table and we all agree before we move forward and take action.
Point taken. We need to move on with the other three positions. Yes, no, do we need to
I
move
don't
on with
think
the
we
other
can.
three positions?
Mary Jo, I don't think we can move on any position
Yeah.
unless somebody wants to confront it.
It's not July. Apparently, it's not July.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, point taken, and if you have anything else to tell me, just tell me. Okay. Okay, John, we need to discuss the billable time for Rebecca and how she does the
We
minutes.
skipped them, right.
And how we can maybe streamline that a little bit. And I would like to say that the way that Suzanne has set the city meetings up, I would like to see us do that with Rebecca. Michael, can I go to you to explain that to the board? Because I think that would be, in conjunction with city council, a good fit.
Sure. So we take action minutes, just basically the real high level details instead of a verbatim play-by-play sort of approach to minutes. And the council had quite a lengthy dialogue on whether that's what they wanted or not. And the council did think that that was a good idea. That was some months ago. So if the board would prefer, we can certainly put Rebecca in touch with Suzanne if she likes. Perhaps Rebecca's familiar with action minutes. I don't know, but we're happy to be a resource.
If you
Okay.
guys are approving the minutes as they are in, as good as I know, it's action minutes summary. I can work to improve it with Suzanne, but I do action minutes with city manager for all the boards. So I'm not sure if it's the same, so I'll check that out.
It is.
If-
Okay, I think if they were the same, then people would know how to do both of them. Dawn, does that sound good to you?
Yeah, I don't, word for word would take her, she's done all of, she's gone through the months and brought everything up to date and only spent 21 hours. It would have taken her 100 hours to do it verbatim, word for word. It just doesn't make any sense. And word for word is recorded. If somebody wants to go in and find it, they can go in and find it.
Okay, Jerry?
Well, I was presented with a situation a few years ago where I was needing the minutes from the board of review meeting that I'd had. And my next step was to go to the city council for my objections. And I was required to bring the minutes along. And in order to get the minutes, Sally told me it was going to be $300 or $500 to get that recorded out. I don't think that's a fair burden to put on people and all. And I think that we've been recording them fairly precisely up to this point. And my position is I'd like to see it continue, because I think it really, in these times, they're very contentious and there might be some need for that.
Mhm. Jerry, I appreciate that, and I don't mean to contradict you, but I do know that there's some new software that Suzanne has and City does have that should eliminate that you should be able to click on and then cost anything, and you can go directly to it.
Yep.
So,
We do keep digital recordings that are accessible by anybody, and they are time stamped. You can go back to the minutes and click on the timestamp. It'll take you directly to the video, and that's something that's relatively recent
Yeah,
since COVID. So.
and that wasn't available.
Sure.
So.
Mhm.
yeah, so that's a good point, but I think that there's new software. Okay, any more?
So are we making a
Do
motion
we
then
need
for
to-
action minutes?
That's what do we need to, I think it would look better if we did have a motion to do
Well, I think
that.
we made a motion last time to have her do it verbatim, so.
I
need to
know we
change
did.
this.
So we better make a motion this time. So John, are you making that motion?
Yes, ma'am. I'm making a motion that we would have Rebecca Allen do action minutes for her notes.
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Rusty.
Okay.
All those in favor, I think we can just raise our hand on this one.
Aye.
All in favor, okay, unanimous.
No, it isn't.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
We have one no.
One no.
One no.
Jerry Good is a no, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Okay. Discuss proposed motion, no DDA board members authorized to establish.
You
Gotta do
missed,
11.
you missed Rebecca. She'd like to get paid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, still, yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that on the agenda. I didn't realize you were paid.
So
Can you submit a
Sorry,
statement?
did.
Okay.
It's on the
We
back.
already have it. Oh, that's what's on here.
The last
Yeah,
page.
turn it over,
Last
last
page.
page. Just take your whole thing, turn it over.
And I would like to state this is a learning process. I do have a few minutes to transcribe it. This is a learning process for me, and I do have a few
Okay,
more minutes to transcribe. I think 3 to 5 minutes according to what has not been kept up with. But it shouldn't go
Okay.
over 20 hours a month to 30, depending on what you guys need.
It's fine.
And after that, it will wean off probably.
okay, so it's $15, and say, Rebecca can correct me if I'm wrong, for the first 3 months. Then it goes to $17.50, then it goes to $25.
I don't have a contract, so I have no idea.
That's what we did with Corey.
That's Corey. That's not her.
So, well,
We
that's
should-
what I'm
we should
saying.
Open this up for,
So.
are
do
we discussing her
want to-
pay here? Is that appropriate?
Yes,
We did that.
no, we discussed that. We discussed what we had been paid. So do we want to change that? I would say $17.50 an hour and then raise it to 20 after she has done this enough and got the feel for it and how it's gonna be. That's just a suggestion. I
So-
work for free, so I.
So I'm gonna do something unusual. Rebecca, can you give us your perspective? No, your
I was
perspective.
like trying to leave. I
No.
didn't
No.
know.
No,
My perspective is that I took about 4 minutes for the first 4 hours for the first meeting, considering I was started word for word. In 15 minutes of time, it took me 45 minutes to stop and pause and keep going. So I do think I am highly educated. I am worth $20 an hour. If you do not decide to pay me that, I will work for whatever you decide to pay me, because I did take this job and I will work it. But I will get quicker as time goes by, and I do think I am worth $20 an hour. But the cost of living in this state has went up dramatically since the last contract was signed.
I make a motion that we set Rebecca Allen's pay at $20 an hour. For, immediately and retro to this invoice. And that although our target is 20 hours per month, that initially The board has leeway between 20 to 30 hours until we get the hang of this. So that gives you a chance to kind of plan and budget for yourself. And we also need to get with the city and get a formal contract together so that we don't look like
Yes.
podunk board of directors.
I second.
Well,
Did I beat you?
okay.
Matt McCracken, I'll second.
So Matt seconds it. More discussion?
Yes,
I
just
would,
a discussion. I just received the salaries of the city. So if you just give me 1 minute, I want to give the board an idea of what the city is paying for that type of position, just as a relative. It only take me a minute just to do the calculation.
so while he's doing that, to get someone to write this new contract up, because the only thing I had was an old contract that Al gave me that had Corey's name on it and all of it filled in. So I guess, Matt, can I ask you, since you are the treasurer, could you work with the city to come up with a new contract stating this new price for Rebecca?
Yes.
Would you be willing to do that? And if you need to consult John, could you, two of you together, take care of that?
Yes.
John? Thank you, John. John and I are gonna do it.
Okay, is that good with the board? Okay,
So
you'll get that done.
Go ahead.
Mary Jo, I do have those numbers for you.
All right,
The low for the position, just to give you an idea of where $20 would stand, the city pays equivalent of 23. And in another higher assistant, it's 30. So $20 an hour is,
that's good.
it's low. But as we talked about, we could raise it up thereafter.
Yeah, I would suggest we start at 20 and then in 3 months, once she has the lay of the land and we have a better sense of her timing, then we can consider upping it at that point.
Yeah, I second, yeah.
Okay, so we're consensus with that. So there's you more information, so. this Contract.
Okay.
And
And
get
if-
paid.
Yep.
Yes,
And
Michael?
the city does have some draft contracts for contract positions that we can start out with you for a template.
Okay,
If that
some
would help.
boilerplate and we can
Mhm.
make revisions. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay.
do you feel better, Rebecca?
Yes,
You get paid.
to be clear on the invoice, I sent it to you, and you guys get it to them, and
Yes.
then they
She submitted.
They-
it to that.
pay you.
Yes.
but We
Yes.
have to wait for the contract for that.
I would say no, but if we're all comfortable with trusting her, I mean, you'll get the contract right away. You should be able to do it about the same time, but it isn't necessary. I would say. What do you
I'd like to
think?
get the ball rolling on getting her paid. I'd like to
I
get the
do
invoice
too. I
right
think
away.
She obviously
Yeah.
put in the time, she should be paid.
And we can handle, I'm witnessing all this. I'm sure we can make that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
I can pay her now.
I think those are the important. as the city
Okay.
manager pays.
Look it out.
okay, what is this? Discuss proposed motion. No DDA board members are authorized to establish outside meetings other than parties engaged in attorney. Okay, that was for me, you think I.
No, okay, so I asked to have this motion put in the agenda and, again, don't make it personal. I would just say that this should be a best practice. That if we're going to negotiate with Mr. Williams, if we're going to negotiate with Mr. Patel, if we're going to take any action, this board should be aware of it. We should sanction it, and then we should know who's going to be, for instance, Mr. McCracken and Mr. Gamelki are going to get this contract together for us. We authorize that. We're aware of it. All I'm saying is that, and again, it's not pointing towards you. It's just saying that's a proper procedure for this board.
And I agree with that. And I think now we finally have got a full board. We finally have a website. We are now all on it. So now I think that will be a lot easier to get that information out through Rebecca. You now have an employee. So I think that we shouldn't have that problem moving forward.
What's that? We're not on the email yet, are you? Yeah. Oh, I didn't see that.
So to that point, I will make the motion that no DDA board member is authorized to establish outside meetings with other parties or engage attorney billable time without prior approval of the board.
I have a question, as a point of order, you made the motion about the billable hours. Was there a second or vote?
Yes, Matt seconded it and it was.
Unanimous.
Yeah, because I was trying to. not get too
Unanimous,
involved in
wasn't it?
that. It was unanimous, so
Yes.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so did you get this last motion and second
Yeah,
on the
first.
DDA board?
I didn't hear a second.
I didn't know, no one seconded because she wanted to make sure she needed.
Yeah, I haven't got a second. Yes, ma'am. Sorry about it.
Rebecca, tell me
Okay,
when
then
you're ready
Rebecca,
for a
would you
second.
read the motion back to us?
So the motion is,
It was on.
sorry, no DDA board member is authorized to establish outside meetings with other parties or engage attorney billable time without prior approval of the board.
I'll second that.
Okay. Who made the motion?
Tony?
Tony made the motion
Mr. Perry did, yeah.
and Rusty seconded.
Mhm.
Discussion?
Does that include emails?
Emails in terms of,
Representing the board?
That would be, you're referring to like what Rusty emailed to Mike, so that would refer to that as well.
Yeah, authorized to establish outside meetings.
yeah, I think, yeah, to your point,
So
Mr.
that
Good. The intent of this motion is now that we all, I assume, have working emails that are managed and protected. We're all being careful about not doing reply all to trigger an illegal meeting. Yeah, what I would say is that we challenge ourselves. For instance, Mr. Williams called me this week asking me to call him back, and I did not do that. So yes, I would say that moving forward, let's commit that everything flows through Rebecca and John in terms of communicating to each other properly, that we don't have a meeting with more than 2 members at a time so that we're in compliance, and that any germane issue that pops up, that it's brought before this board for discussion to determine action items. So yes, I agree with you.
Okay.
And if I may, it's only been, I think it was only twice that people went around Rebecca and I and sent out an email to everybody. We asked that it would go through me and then through Rebecca, please, just to, because then it's just easier for her. It was 2 people. I'm not, it's okay. So
So before we leave.
that's all I ask is, and it just makes it easier, just a little bit more organized for Rebecca and I to handle it that way. Please.
You're the.
Call for the question.
She's the.
All
admin.
right, so
I'm the
now,
secretary.
is we done with the discussion on that? We can take a vote,
With the language. needs to be
starting Matt.
Oh.
I.
I
yes,
say
no?
yes, Matt
Okay.
McCracken.
Well, let's see.
Yes,
Yes, John Gamota.
yes,
Bourne says yes.
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 Yes,
Yes,
Okay, Rebecca, you got it all now. Okay, discussion on budget. Matt, I was gonna ask if you were ready to do it. I see you have one attached.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we did, the pretty simple adjustments we did last meeting or the special meeting, you know,
That
were
was for the budget?
correct.
Okay.
And we do have an attached budget, revised budget. And those changes line up with, are reflected in the new budget. So, I mean, it's pretty much what we suggested, recommended, was adopted.
Okay,
I do have, since I'm talking right now,
Mhm.
I do have a bill that was in our mailbox.
okay.
I have a copy for everybody. It looks like it was for some design work for the cog railway car. So-
That was way back and it was already paid. I think is it. for
Well, here, take a look.
John?
There's copies.
Mary Jo, is this the $467?
Correct. There was an outstanding balance of 467, something like that.
Bring up, it hasn't been paid.
Oh, was that today, John?
For the cog.
It looks like a little bit was paid.
This was for Christmas decoration.
No, that was for the cog.
Oh, no,
panels.
I know what this is
Okay.
through the Historical Society.
Yeah.
This is the one that we all agreed to do that with.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
So we.
there
need
should be
to-
enough copies, but
we need
either way,
to
it's not
approve
a
that.
huge bill. It's just,
Yeah, yeah. No, we had approved that way back with
Okay.
Sally to do that.
so we want to just get this paid,
We
right?
need to get this approved through this board as well.
Okay,
Let's do it just because it's already been approved and let's do it again.
okay.
Is that good?
I move to authorize the treasurer to pay this invoice immediately.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
I,
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none unanimous, we don't need it. Okay,
Thanks for doing the budget.
next, Matt, more? You got more?
Don't have anything else at this time. It was just that bill that was brought up. Wanted to make sure we addressed that and got that taken care of.
Good, good.
So you're up again, treasurer's report.
All right, so then we got treasurer's report, and you already did that. Invoices received last meeting, obtaining revenue. The revenue report from Keller County, do you have anything on that?
No,
Okay.
I do not have anything on the revenue report. I think we're waiting on it. We're waiting on them to generate something for us.
Okay. General discussion and audience participation. Let's start with general discussion and we'll start with Arden. Do you have anything,
I do not.
Tony?
Yeah, so we asked Mr. Gamelke to let Mr. Benedetti know he was gone. We need to put an action item to actually, we kind of put the cart before the horse. We need a process to select a new attorney. And you need to appoint someone to spearhead that. It is a specialized, it's not just contracts. DDA is a specialized area of law. And there are other attorneys in the state that specialize in that, but you actually need to identify them, select and go through a selection process.
I would like to ask if Michael could go through the city's attorneys on who an attorney familiar with TIF and DDAs would be. Because I think that even though he doesn't know a lot about it, I think he knows who does.
Yeah, we've asked that question. We can ask for some names and give it to the board and however the board wants to do it, but we're happy to come up with a list.
But we
Okay.
want to appoint someone on this board to spearhead that, right?
Correct.
I think
Yes.
that's what Tony's bringing up.
Correct, but I think that that would expedite it going through their attorneys, because I do know that he does, your new attorney does have some knowledge about some TIF attorneys. And I would, again, ask our secretary if he would move forward with that. Have you got time to do that, John? Would you rather someone else do
if
it?
somebody else wants to, that'd be okay with me.
Would-
Tony, would you be comfortable doing that?
Yeah, that's what I would think.
So, Tony, would
fire.
you work with Michael and see what you can come up with someone who does understand TIF?
Yeah, and to be clear, we'll follow kind of a best practices of identifying potential parties. For instance, I already know that one of the best DDA attorneys in the state actually has to be excluded because he represented Mr. Weatherford in the court case, so he can't even be considered. But the process would be to work with Michael to go through that process to see what they can come up with, and then make a list of other DDAs in the state and get their recommendations, get some CVs from attorneys who might be interested, get some pricing schedules, and come back with a recommended process on potentially selecting an attorney. So that's what I'll commit to.
Any comment from the boards? That suit you?
Yes.
Yes.
think I'd like to make a motion to appoint Tony Perry as the spearhead for that.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All of us.
Opposed? One no, Jerry's no.
Who was the second? So sorry.
There were several.
Al,
I think Dave.
Just grab one.
David seconded,
Thank you.
Yeah,
and it
grab
was
one.
all yes except Jerry.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Tony? Rusty?
I had two things. You've already solved one of them. I was asked by the Historical Preservation Committee, since I'm the city council liaison to that body, to bring forward, they have an initiative for the Midland Terminal Depot, the actual building right next to where we have the cog. The city has gone to Newmont Mines for grant money and received $5,000 commitment to do an asbestos abatement. The total price is $12,000. So they've locked 5 in. The historical preservation is going to be asking the city and the DDA if they might be willing to contribute a couple $1,000s to the abatement so they can then move to the next phase. They fully funded the signs going up, those cog historical panels. They are going to be putting those up. They're spending $2,700 to have those mounted by the cog. It'll be done on city property, not DDA property, but they'll be so that you can read the historical informative panels about the cog car and other things to include the station. But they're asking for some help because the Historical Preservation Committee does not have a budget. Their total budget is only $2,800 total. And they're committing $2,700 of it to the installation of the signs. The signs have been made graphically. They just need to be actually mounted. They're asking for a couple $1,000 assistance in the abatement because eventually that will become a museum with internal displays of the history of all of the trains and everything.
Okay, that answered my question.
You got a whole bunch of railroad ties laying over there and all. Have they given it any
No, we do.
consideration? Yeah, but any consideration using those as the post maybe for these signs? It might be, kind of appropriate action.
They've already got 3, they went out to 3 bidders. They've gone with the one that they came in with, they knew was going to be the low.
Okay.
And it's a more permanent metal thing with slants and everything attached in the ground. And they're doing it in a manner so that wherever we do anything with the DDA, the signs can accompany with the cog car because we didn't know what was going to happen. So they put in a transportability, a sleeve type of mechanism. A good suggestion, but they've already got the design done. So I did not participate in the budget discussion. I recused myself from that. All I can do is present this as a request as a liaison, and then I will have to recuse myself for any further conversation.
Do we have that in the budget, Matt?
I mean, so everybody's got a copy of that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we got $12,000 for beautification, right? So
That's in 2022.
right, okay, for this year, yeah, we got 2,000.
Yeah,
And for beautification this year.
Yeah, we spent
I mean-
1940 more than we were budgeted.
Right, yeah, so we don't, we're kind of tapped out this year, other than that, right?
What's the timing of this project?
They're moving forward with the construction.
The abatement,
The abatement, there is no timeline.
Mine's colored here.
They don't have any funds this year. I will be bringing that forward as a council member to the city council for some funds. So we're trying for this year.
Okay, so do we are capped out this year? Are you sticking with that? Yeah.
So what about Woodland Station improvements?
Okay, Michael has something.
Fall into
he'd like
that?
to-
So I certainly don't want to step on Mr. McCracken's toes. My apology, Matt.
You're good.
But I've pulled up where you are for your 2021 budget to date here. And you do have some savings elsewhere in your budget. Legal services, for example. You do have the Woodland Station improvement money as well.
Which that was the money we didn't roll over.
Right.
Okay.
I know the board's felt very strongly about the use of that money, as has the city council. But there are other savings in the budget if you wanted to fund a few $1,000s
And
for this, you could.
we're looking at about $6,000. Is that about?
Oh, no, I mean.
Oh, no, it's gonna be $12,000 for the
It's
abatement. right?
12 total. They have 5. They have 7 that they do not have accounted for.
Okay, so there's 7 missing.
There's 7 missing.
Okay.
I was hoping to go back to city council
Okay.
and ask for half of that, 3,500,
Okay.
hoping that the DDA might have 3,500 in their budget. If not, whatever you don't, I will be going to the city and asking for the remainder.
Okay, and I just want to make sure I understood what you said. I think I'm familiar with the historic building. It was the one that was moved from Memorial Park
Yeah.
over
The
next to the
baggage building.
station,
Yeah,
right?
baggage bill.
So that's going to be opened up as a museum to display Cog Railway history or Woodland Park history.
A combination of both.
Okay.
More
Combination of
train
both.
history than.
Yeah, because it's where the old rail station was,
Woodland.
right? Woodland Station, right?
Yes. and,
Okay.
and
They're
it would be
negoti-
the Woodland or the Midland Terminal, Midland, the train is
So-
called the Midland. No, it wasn't called, it's the Midland Railway, thank you. So it was called the Midland Railway. Well, I find that interesting when we tried to beg for any kind of money for the cog car.
Yeah.
We got nothing for it. No
So-
one approved anything for any of it. And now we're giving all kinds of money away.
There's the abatement, $12,000, right? 12,
12
Okay.
total. They have an $80,000 project
sure,
for the thing. They've already put on the new roof on the building.
sure.
They're now working for the asbestos abatement, and then they will be working on the interior. They're negotiating for one of those larger scale trains that run around up inside of it. They've already
Okay,
targeted.
yeah,
That would
okay.
be one thing that they're
But
putting. in.
we're just trying to deal with the abatement right now.
That is correct.
Okay.
Just the
I mean,
asbestos abatement.
I'm in approval of it, guys. If we've got the money, I'm in approval of it.
I would vote no, but I would come up with funds from the private sector to add to the pot.
I would say no, because everything we tried to do, we had to go to the private
Who's
sector.
we?
The DDA board.
We are the
prior
DDA
to you-
board.
Prior to you, when we moved the cog in, everything we did, we had to go to the private sector. We're now a new board. So, I can't think that would have changed, but it is up to the board. But we did go to the private sector because there was so much pushback that we were using taxpayers' dollars for personal agenda items. So.
Okay.
Well, that's the beauty of this board. We could have differing opinions and take it to a question. If someone wants to make a motion.
Look at us all jump up here to do that.
I would like to make a motion.
Okay, Jerry.
That we come up with $3,500. and donate it to it. I think it's a good thing to do.
And I would second that. I think it's about time the DDA put some money back into the community that we had our name on, that was for the general public. That's what we're here for, as well as to represent our constituents as far as the businesses downtown. So I think that would be a good thing. I would second that. Any discussion?
Yeah, and I would just like to state, I know I was part of the original project moving that building from the park when I did Memorial Park, and the city's already put some substantial money into that, building the foundation and, siting the building. I know they've had a vision, they've had an architect working on it over the last few years, and money's been tight, so they haven't been able to start the process of really opening that up to the public, which is the overall intent. So I would be in favor of participating in that project.
Any more comment?
Mhm.
Then let's vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I will oppose because I've been very consistent on this point, but I will find funds to add to the pot.
Okay,
And
did
just
you get that, Rebecca?
in a point of order,
How much did we come up with an amount?
35,
35.
Do we come up where it's coming from?
the attorney's fund.
in a point of
Well-
order, I did not vote. I'm
Point of
recusing.
order,
Mike?
Rebecca,
Thank you.
Rusty did not vote. Can you take it out of the attorney's fund?
Legal fees or
We-
professional fees?
You have, I would say you would have savings primarily because of your not using your legal services. We'll put it in the account where it belongs. But you're covered because you have legal savings is how I would say.
Right, because I thought that was the point you made, that there are savings, but not sure exactly where it's coming from. yet.
Right. We'll find the correct account. It's a technicality.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
we're not
think
gonna spend legal dollars on this.
It'll be it from the unrestricted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
miscellaneous or
Well, yeah,
professional
definitely
services.
want to be, we definitely want detail on where it comes from, of course. So, okay.
Okay,
It is a
so
great
you
project.
done, Rusty?
Those are my two
And
thinking.
we have all heard Tony say he's gonna come up with the rest of it.
No, he didn't say that.
I make a motion that.
Let's see what,
Come on.
let's see how Rusty goes at the
All right.
city council now.
The only thing I wanted to bring up is I know I had someone show up this morning and call me and ask where the board meeting was, because it's still listed on our website as 7 a.m. Just some cleanup on some of our web space.
Gotcha.
So I already sent in a correction to the contact at the city to change Mr. Gemelke from security to secretary.
I like that title.
And it is incorrect. It says first Tuesday of each month at 6:30 PM. So they must have,
In the city website, it's
no,
correct.
that's what I'm saying.
On the DDA
Well, the
website.
DDA website should be killed. We're trying to,
Okay.
it's not.
Eh,
This is the official.
That's
DDA.
where I found it, was the city website.
Yeah, so we have to kill the other one.
Yeah, if we can get rid of
Trying to
that,
wrest control of it.
Okay. Anything else, Dave?
that's it. Or our agenda has it wrong also.
Yeah. Well, I
Okay.
reprinted it.
What's your name, Jerry?
So, yes.
It's after 8 o'clock.
No, nothing at this time, thanks.
Okay. Al,
Additional, thank you.
John,
No, man.
Matt,
Could we call Mike Williams again? Let's talk to him some more.
okay, I do have one thing. If I want to talk about workshops, I'd like to see us move forward with good positive actions. Do we want to do any workshops? Do we want to just work it into our regular meetings? Do we want to just sit down and talk about different projects throughout town that we might be able to help on? This is one we just did. I just want some feedback. If not, we'll quit
I
talking
like
about
the
it.
idea of workshops. For me right now, with it being Thanksgiving's coming up, Christmas is coming up, I think I'd like to wait until after the holidays.
Okay, and if we do it after the first of the
After.
year.
Maybe we could schedule
might be
something.
Interested in talking about them again after the first of the year.
Yeah.
Is that consensus down here too?
Yeah, as long as we have a focus, we understand what we're trying
Exactly,
to
but-
accomplish.
And that's what we need to have a workshop. on. How are we gonna accomplish?
And maybe some examples of what they've
Okay,
done
Is that
before.
good? Dave? All right, that's all I needed to know after the first of the year. Michael, would you like to have anything to put into this?
Only that we have made the very important correction that no longer is Mr. Gemelke's security. Oh, I kind of like that. He has been revised to secretary, and that's it.
Are you our new liaison now?
I'll be your temporary liaison to give Sally some home life. She's here many nights a week. We anticipate having a new planning director in the January timeframe, and my hope is that person will be your permanent liaison.
Okay, Rebecca, do you have anything? Tanner, do you have anything? Pat, do you have anything? Then could I please have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Matt. All
Hi,
those-
John.
By John. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Yeah.
Meeting's adjourned.
Like
Thank
that.
you all for coming.